solo dinner together, and that was the last I ever heard from Meghan Markle. I have never heard from her again. I love Suits, the show she was in, and I followed on Twitter 4 of the stars of Suits, including Meghan. Well, certainly Meghan Markle is now reduced from somebody who, remember Meghan, she had a fairy tale royal.
Been less than kind, unimaginative, and frustrating, said Variety magazine. So sickening I almost brought up my breakfast, said The Guardian. All the intimacy of Instagram, sneered the New York Times. A nauseating, self-serving snooze fest, said another pundit. Well, that last one was me, actually. But here's the thing. Piers Morgan just did something nobody saw coming. Live on his show, he displayed photos. Not just any photos. Old images showing Meghan Markle at exclusive Soho House events from her pre-royal days, surrounded by wealthy men, positioned in elite circles she claims she never pursued. And here's the twist that changes everything. This isn't just Piers ranting like he does every week. This time he had something to show, images that were meant to stay buried forever, scrubbed from the internet, hidden behind closed doors. And when people saw them flash across the screen, when Piers started going through each photo with that signature smirk, the internet exploded within minutes.
Well, Meghan Markle famously denied briefing Scobie for his last book, Finding Freedom. But then she was forced.
One question echoed louder than anything else. What exactly was Meghan doing at those Soho House parties? And why has she worked so hard to make everyone forget they ever happened? Now, before we get into this, smash that like button and subscribe, because what comes next is gonna blow your mind. Secret networks, connections that make no sense, and a past that's been scrubbed clean. This goes way deeper than you think. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Let's dive in. Let's go back so you understand this better. It's 2016, and Piers Morgan meets Meghan Markle at a pub in Kensington. They sit down, talk for over an hour, and Piers walks away thinking they're building a real friendship. You know, the kind where you actually stay in touch, maybe grab drinks again, keep the conversation going. They're in the same industry, they get how the game works, and it feels natural. It feels genuine. But here's what happens next. The very next night, Meghan goes to Soho House.
There is no comparison between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana in terms of the treatment they got, all the media attention.
She has dinner with Prince Harry, and Piers, he never hears from her again. Complete radio silence. Not one text, not one call, nothing. She just vanished, gone. That hour-long conversation might as well have never happened, and whatever connection they'd built meant absolutely nothing the second someone better walked into the room. Now, to most people, that probably sounds like someone found better opportunities. You meet a prince, you move on, makes sense, right? I mean, who wouldn't drop their plans if royalty came calling? But here's the thing. Naturally, moving on is one thing. Completely ghosting someone who thought you were becoming friends, that's different. Your life getting busy is understandable. Erasing someone from existence like they never mattered in the first place, that's a choice. To anyone who understands social climbing, this sounds calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing when she sat down with Piers. Keep him interested just long enough, make him think a real connection's happening.
Well, Meghan got a bit of a shock herself when she invited 16-year-old head boy Acker Okoye up onto the stage to say a few words. He grabbed the...
Then drop him the absolute second someone more useful comes along. It's strategic, and that's what makes it sting differently. But here's where this gets personal. To Piers Morgan himself, that wasn't rude or disappointing, that was betrayal, and he's been obsessed with it ever since. Think about it, you spend an hour with someone, you're connecting, there's mutual respect happening, and then they just erase you. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. That sticks with you. That stays in your head. And for someone like Piers, who's got a platform and millions of people watching, that becomes fuel. So this photo moment we're talking about, it's not random criticism. It's not Piers being Piers and going off for clicks like he does every week. It's not him waking up bored and deciding to talk about Meghan. No, this is years of built-up anger, finally armed with something to show people. Revenge that's been waiting, brewing, building pressure, and now it's got ammunition.
This is why it hurts. No, I really liked her. I just think she's a slight social climber, I'm afraid. And when I see the way...
See, here's what makes this different from all the other times Piers has talked about Meghan. Before, those were words, opinions, him saying what he thought based on what he saw. But this time, he's reportedly got something visual. People can actually look at it. It doesn't rely on them trusting his word or believing his version of events. And that changes everything. Because when you've got images, people can see with their own eyes. Your criticism isn't just criticism anymore. It becomes about what's right there in front of them, not whether they believe you or not. And for someone who's been waiting for this moment, sitting on this anger for years, finally getting the chance to say, look, I told you so, here it is. That's not just satisfying, that's vindication. So yeah, this isn't random or casual, this is personal. And trust me, when feelings run this deep, when someone's been holding on to anger this long, that makes all the difference in how far they're willing to go. Here's Meghan's official story, and you've probably heard it 1,000 times by now.
So Meghan's spokesperson just dropped a bomb, and honestly, this might be the clearest.
She was a working actress on Suits, living a relatively normal life, focused on her humanitarian work and her blog called The Tig. Just a regular person trying to make it in Hollywood, doing good things, staying grounded. That's the version she's sold to everyone. That's what you see in her Netflix documentaries, in her interviews, in every carefully crafted piece of content about her pre-royal days. But what you never see in those documentaries, what doesn't make it into the official narrative, Meghan Markle was deeply embedded in Soho House culture for years. And I'm not talking about being a casual visitor, someone who stops by occasionally when they're in town. She treated these clubs like her personal headquarters, her home base, the place where everything happened. She had access to Soho House properties in multiple cities. We're talking London, Toronto, New York. These aren't just nice clubs you can walk into if you've got some money. Even major celebrities can't get through the door.
And then the other guy, I won't name him, but there's another actor in Suits, and he did the same. I didn't hear from him either. So he'd been shut down.
And get this, Kim Kardashian was denied membership. So was Kobe Bryant. Let that sink in for a second. Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous people on the planet, got turned away. Kobe Bryant, a basketball legend, same story. But Meghan Markle, a cable TV actress most people had never heard of, had regular access to properties across multiple continents. The founder of Soho House, Nick Jones, even said it himself. We try not to give membership to people who would fuel paparazzi or bring press. They're selective about keeping the wrong kind of attention away. They want privacy, discretion, people who understand how to move in these circles without making noise. So how does someone who later becomes one of the most photographed women in the world, someone who brings paparazzi everywhere she goes, how does that person get access? It doesn't add up. Now compare that access with what the photos reportedly show.
They made a series of allegations directly inferring racism by senior
Meghan at these events regularly. Not once in a while, not as someone's plus one who happened to tag along. Regularly. Surrounded by wealthy men at parties where billionaires gather. Positioned exactly where power and money congregate. And those gatherings aren't casual hangouts. They're networking events at the highest level where connections get made that can change your entire life trajectory. This isn't how someone focused on their acting career networks casually. It's not what you do when you're grinding auditions, working on your craft, trying to land the next role, and it absolutely doesn't match the humble humanitarian narrative she's built her entire brand around. You can't be the down-to-earth girl who cares about making the world better while simultaneously being a fixture at exclusive billionaire parties. Those two images don't fit together. They tell completely different stories about who someone really is and what they're actually after. One observer put it perfectly when they looked at these photos. They said, these aren't photos of someone who accidentally fell into royal life.
Well, since that moment, they've systematically and relentlessly exploited their existing royal status to make as much money as possible.
These look like images of someone who spent years positioning herself exactly where wealthy, powerful men would notice her. And that's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The intentionality of it all, the strategic placement, the access that shouldn't exist but somehow does. There's even a guy named Christopher Jones who allegedly said he worked the yacht circuit and his time there overlapped with Meghan's. Now, Christopher Jones is a pretty common name, so who knows if it's the same person or if the story holds up under scrutiny. But the fact that these stories exist at all, the fact that people who claim to have been in those circles keep mentioning her name, that tells you something about the world she was moving in. So when you look at the official story Meghan tells, and then you look at what these photos reportedly show, you're looking at two completely different people.
It could be legally actionable. He hadn't lied. He hadn't defamed. He had, however, presented private moments in a way that made them public and viral.
And that gap between the two versions, that's what makes people ask questions. Let's talk about Marcus Anderson, because this is where things start getting really interesting. He's not just Meghan's close friend, he's the global membership director of Soho House. Read that again. Global membership director. That means he literally decides who gets into these exclusive clubs and who stays locked out forever. He's the gatekeeper, the person with the keys to a world most people will never even get close to. When Meghan needed access to elite circles, Marcus provided it. That part makes sense on the surface, right? A friend helping out a friend. But here's where it gets wild. When Meghan moved cities, Marcus relocated to, not once, multiple times.
Finally out. For years, the world believed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had crafted a picture-perfect family.
Los Angeles to New York to Toronto, Toronto to London, London back to California. He followed every single move. Now think about that for a second. That almost never happens with regular friendships. You might visit a friend who moves away, keep in touch, do video calls, see each other when you can, but you don't uproot your entire life multiple times. To follow someone across continents, especially when you've got a corporate executive position that requires you to stay in one location, manage operations, oversee an entire global network of exclusive clubs. That's not a job where you can just pack up and leave whenever you feel like it. For Marcus to have relocated multiple times just to be near Meghan, his role wasn't about friendship, it was about managing her access.
Poured fuel on the flames. He says that Meghan wrote private letters to King Charles, naming two royals who she accuses of
managing her positioning, making sure she stayed connected to the network that would eventually lead her straight to Prince Harry. And that network wasn't random. It was deliberate, carefully maintained, and incredibly valuable to someone who knew how to use it. Someone even said it outright. Marcus is indispensable. Without Marcus Anderson, Meghan Markle wouldn't have the level of fame she has now. Think about that statement. It's not Marcus is a good friend or Marcus has been supportive. It's indispensable, as in, without him, none of this happens. Without him, there's no royal wedding, no Duchess title, no Netflix deals, no Oprah interview. Nothing. That's not the kind of language you use to describe a casual friendship. That's the language you use to describe someone who was essential to making everything possible.
Harry and Meghan when their behavior became obnoxious, self-serving, and rankly hypocritical.
You guys are not going to...
And it's not like Marcus was just hanging around in the background being supportive. He was front and center at key moments. There's footage of him sitting next to Meghan at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games. Right there beside her, at an event where Prince Harry was the star, where the focus was supposed to be on veterans and their families. Marcus Anderson is positioned right next to Meghan. And when you look back at that footage now, knowing everything that's happened since, you realize just how significant that positioning was. He attended her wedding, he was there, close to the action, part of the inner circle. He allegedly introduced her to Harry in the first place, though the exact details of how that introduction happened have always been a bit fuzzy. But the point is, Marcus wasn't just around when convenient. He was embedded in every major moment of Meghan's transformation from cable actress to royal figure.
One hand has raised.
Subversive.
Actually, that is one more than I expected, I have to be honest.
And here's what people don't talk about enough. Soho House isn't just a club, it's a network. A web of connections between wealthy, powerful people who move in circles most of us will never understand. And Marcus Anderson sits at the center of that web, controlling access, managing relationships, deciding who gets to be part of it. For him to have taken such a personal interest in Meghan's trajectory, to have relocated multiple times to stay close to her, to have been present at every crucial moment in her rise, that suggests his role went far beyond friendship. It suggests he was managing an asset, positioning someone he believed could go far if given the right access, introductions, and opportunities at the right time. And looking at where Meghan ended up, it's hard to argue he was wrong. Now here's where things get really interesting.
Piers Morgan has never been shy about calling Meghan out. But this time, he wasn't reacting to an interview or a dramatic...
For years, people have been talking about photos of Meghan on luxury yachts. Not just vacation snapshots, we're talking about images with wealthy men at events connected to Soho House, circles, in settings that don't exactly scream working actress saving money for auditions. And the more you dig into this, the more questions come up that nobody seems able to answer. There's even a documentary called The Dark World of Celebrity Yachting that referenced her. Now, you can decide for yourself whether that documentary is credible or just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But the fact it exists, that her name came up in that context at all, tells you something about the conversations happening around her pre-royal life. Then there's author Kirby Summers, who wrote extensively about connections between Meghan and billionaire Ron Burkell.
About what went on in Paris, but they couldn't cancel this event. What?
Then, amid the frenzy, came that single voice, sharp, unfiltered, cutting.
And here's where that gets interesting. Ron Burkell has been on Soho House's board since 2012. So we're not talking about random wealthy guy who happens to exist in the same city. We're talking about someone directly connected to the organization that gave Meghan access to everything. Someone with ties to Marcus Anderson's world. Someone positioned at the exact intersection of wealth, power, and the exclusive network Meghan was moving through. The book describes how she moved in these ultra-wealthy circles, attending yacht parties, luxury events, high-end gatherings where the guest list reads like a Forbes richest people list. And listen, going to nice parties isn't inherently suspicious. Being in wealthy circles when you've got the connections to be there makes sense. But the question people keep asking is how? How does a cable actress afford that lifestyle? How does she get invited to those events? Who's paying for the travel, the accommodations, the access?
What was it I said about Meghan Markle?
I am. Would you let me talk?
Ever that's been racist?
Are you going to let me talk?
Now here's where things get complicated. Some yacht photos that circulated online turned out to be different women entirely, like model Alexandra Escat, who looks similar to Meghan and got misidentified in photos that spread across the internet. So confusion is definitely mixed in here. Cases of mistaken identity, conspiracy theories running wild, people seeing what they want to see instead of what's actually there. But the rumors never completely die, and here's why. It's the pattern. Her documented connection to Soho House across multiple cities. Unexplained access to properties that cost thousands per night. Close relationship with Marcus Anderson, who has direct ties to billionaire investors and board members. Attendance at elite events where the average person couldn't buy their way in if they tried. All of these things create a picture that makes people wonder,
Meghan Markle gets slammed as she gets downgraded, along with Prince Andrew? Yikes. It's gotten so...
what they're not being told. It's not about one photo or one rumor. It's about the accumulation of details that don't quite fit the official narrative. Details suggesting there was a whole layer to her pre-royal life that's been carefully edited out of every documentary, every interview, every public statement she's made about who she was before Harry. And here's the thing about trying to sort through what's real and what's not. When some photos turn out to be fake, it actually makes it harder to figure out the reality. Because defenders can point to the fake photos and say, see, it's all lies, it's all conspiracy theories, none of it's real. And critics can point to the same fake photos and say, see, they're trying to scrub the internet. They're hiding the real ones by flooding the zone with fakes. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with what we can see: Soho House access across multiple cities.
Harry and Meghan, I do believe that when a South Park episode is made about you, that should be a wake-up.
Confirmed relationships with people like Marcus Anderson and connections to people like Ron Burkell, a lifestyle that doesn't match the income we know she had, and a whole lot of questions that never get clear answers. And when you've got that many questions without answers, when you've got that much smoke without anyone willing to point you toward the fire, people are going to keep asking. They're going to keep digging, and they're going to keep wondering what parts of the story are still missing. Here's the thing about Meghan's pre-Harry life. She presented herself as a working actress living modestly. You know, the struggling artist type. Going to auditions, working on her craft, living within her means while trying to make it in a tough industry. That was the image she projected, what we were supposed to believe about who she was before the royal fairy tale began. But people started noticing things that didn't add up. Private jets, luxury vacations to places most of us only see in travel magazines, access to exclusive clubs where membership costs more than most people make in a year, designer clothes that retail for thousands of dollars each.
Pretty much everywhere across the board. They don't even show Meghan Markle. Now, I'm going to show you the real footage of what happened that day.
And when people asked how she afforded that lifestyle on a cable TV actress salary, the explanations were always vague, always kind of hand-wavy. Never quite concrete enough to actually make sense when you do the math. And it wasn't just the lifestyle questions. Her story about Soho House itself kept changing. At first, she described it as just a place she visited when she was in London. Nothing special, nothing significant, just a convenient spot to hang out, grab a drink, meet friends, casual, like it was the equivalent of your local coffee shop that you stop by sometimes. But then Harry's memoir, Spare, came out, and suddenly the story was different. In the book, he revealed that Meghan called Soho House her headquarters, not just a place she visited.
Famous women in the world sits down for what should be a simple interview and turns it into a complete disaster.
Her headquarters. She kept luggage there. She was so familiar with the location that she suggested it for their first date because she knew it inside and out. Completely different descriptions for the same place. Versions that don't match up at all. Marcus Anderson's story went through the same transformation. Early on, when people started asking about him, Meghan downplayed their friendship. He was just someone she knew through work, a professional acquaintance. Nothing more than that. But then photos started emerging. Photos of them together constantly. At events, at parties, at dinners. Close, comfortable, clearly more than casual acquaintances. He attended her wedding, not as a +1 in the back row. He was there, part of the inner circle, someone important enough to make the guest list for one of the most exclusive events of the decade. And then it came out that he allegedly introduced her to Harry in the first place.
Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle, just stop trashing the royal family. You make enough money off their titles.
So this person who was supposedly just someone she knew through work ended up being the person who orchestrated the most important introduction of her entire life. The story shifted from casual acquaintance to close confidant, from professional connection to indispensable friend. And nobody ever explained why the initial description was so downplayed if the relationship was actually that significant. Why minimize something that ends up being that important? Why describe someone as barely relevant when they're actually central to your entire story? And then there's the wealth question that never got a satisfying answer. Suits paid well for a cable show, sure. But we're talking about maybe $60,000 per episode at her peak, and that's before taxes, before agent fees, before manager cuts, before all the other expenses that come with being an actor.
Who can't handle tough questions. Now, let's get into this incredible clash that had everyone talking.
That's comfortable money, good money even, but it's not private jet money. It's not staying at exclusive properties in multiple cities money. It's not designer wardrobe for every public appearance money. So when people did the math and realized the numbers didn't work, when they asked how she funded a lifestyle that seemed well beyond what her known income could support, the answers were always vague. She invested wisely. She had savings. She was smart with money. Generic responses that sound reasonable until you actually think about what they're claiming. That someone making a good but not extraordinary salary somehow managed to live like someone making 10 times that amount. Different framings for the same questions. Answers that don't quite align. And when you notice one inconsistency, you start looking for others. Once one part of the story doesn't match up, you start questioning whether...
In a stunning twist that has sent shockwaves through the royal world, Meghan Markle is now pleading directly.
Any of it does. That's human nature. That's pattern recognition. And once people started recognizing the patterns in Meghan's story, they couldn't stop seeing them everywhere. Let's break this down simply, because when you actually look at the facts, the questions become pretty obvious. How does an unknown cable actress get regular access to places where A-list celebrities are turned away? This isn't about getting in once because you know someone. This is regular, consistent access across multiple cities, multiple properties, over multiple years. That doesn't just happen by accident. Who paid for stays at locations costing thousands per night? Because we know what Meghan was making from Suits. We can estimate her other income from sponsorships and her blog.
Go, Regis. Iman,
Yeah.
look at the front pages there, which is when their engagement was announced.
Yeah.
Where's the racism?
And those numbers don't cover luxury accommodations in London, Toronto, and New York on a regular basis. Somebody was footing the bill, somebody was providing access, and that somebody has never been identified publicly. Why would the global membership director of an exclusive organization personally manage her access? Marcus Anderson had a job, a big job. Running membership for Soho House globally isn't something you can do on the side while you're busy relocating to different cities every few years. That's a position that requires you to be present, to be managing operations, to be overseeing the business. For him to have made Meghan's access and positioning a priority suggests this wasn't about friendship. This was about something more strategic. And why relocate multiple times to stay near her?
Once upon a time, Meghan Markle's story felt like something out of a Hollywood movie. A young woman from California.
Think about the logistics of that. Packing up your life, finding new housing, adjusting to new cities, doing this over and over again. That's not what friends do, even close ones. Friends visit, keep in touch, maybe help you get into an exclusive club once or twice, but they don't restructure their entire lives around your movements unless there's something bigger happening, unless there's a reason that goes beyond friendship into professional territory. No casual friendship explains this level of attention and effort. The commitment required, the disruption involved, the focus maintained over years. All of it points to something beyond friendship. To people managing important assets who believe that staying close to someone, maintaining that connection, is worth the disruption because the payoff will be significant.
Sanctimonious, faux compassionate, talking down to her audience and trying to be sure that we're all really...
And what people are suggesting goes much deeper than just friendship. The claim is that Meghan wasn't just a guest at Soho House, that she was part of a social network where people were strategically positioned at exclusive events to build connections with wealthy, influential individuals, not randomly, not accidentally, strategically placed to be in the right place at the right time with the right people for career advancement and lifestyle opportunities. The yacht photos people talk about, the luxury vacations that don't match her known income, the access to billionaire circles that makes no sense for someone at her career level. All of it allegedly came with expectations. Expectations about networking, about making connections, about being available and present in these circles for reasons that go beyond just enjoying nice parties.
You know that feeling when something you thought was buried forever suddenly resurfaces and causes total chaos? Well,
high-level access doesn't come free. That's not how these worlds work. There are flights to pay for, accommodations to cover, doors to open that would otherwise stay closed. And in return, there are expectations. Making certain connections, being present at specific events, introducing the right people to each other. There's always something expected in return, even if it's never spelled out explicitly. And people benefit from these arrangements. Those providing the access benefit from having interesting, well-connected people at their events. Those receiving the access benefit from entry into circles that could change their entire life trajectory. And everyone involved benefits from keeping these arrangements quiet, from not speaking openly about how access really works in these elite circles, because it doesn't sound good when you say it out loud.
Just watching. Because no one wants to be attached to a figure whose story might collapse under documentation, and no one wants to stand beside a brain.
That's why these conversations happen in whispers and rumors instead of official statements. Why the details stay vague and the explanations don't quite add up. Because how access really works in ultra-wealthy circles about what's expected and what's provided doesn't fit the fairy tale narrative. It doesn't work with the image of someone who just happened to stumble into royal life through pure chance and genuine connection. And when you start connecting these dots, when you see the pattern of access without explanation, luxury without visible means, connections without clear origin, you realize there's a whole layer to this story that's never been told. A layer that makes much more sense of how someone goes from cable actress to duchess, but only if you're willing to look at the parts of the story that don't make it into the documentaries.
So what do you think happened? Was it the Poppy thing or was it the...
They had just come from the Baby to Baby Gala, and they were posing...
Here's something else people noticed, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A lot of Meghan's pre-Harry online presence just vanished. Not gradually over time like old social media posts that age out. Not because platforms changed or accounts got deleted in a normal way. Photos from certain events, social media posts, connections to specific people, things that were once easy to find suddenly became impossible to locate. And this isn't about one or two things, it's a pattern. Blog posts from the TIG that people remember reading, gone. Photos from parties that were definitely online, scrubbed. Social media interactions with certain people disappeared. It's one thing for someone to clean up their social media before joining the royal family. That makes sense. You'd want to remove anything embarrassing or inappropriate.
Do you think she had a plan all along, Bonnie?
A plan to do what?
Take Prince Harry from the arms of the royal...
But this seemed to go beyond normal cleanup. People who followed her before Harry, who read her blog regularly, who saw her posts, they remember specific content that no longer exists anywhere. And when things disappear from the internet, that's actually pretty unusual. The internet has a way of preserving everything. Screenshots, archives, cached pages. Stuff usually sticks around even when you try to delete it. So for content to actually vanish, for it to become truly unfindable, that requires effort. Active work to remove things from multiple places. And when questions came up about her past, when people started digging into her pre-royal life, the pattern was consistent. Make the story disappear. Control the narrative. Move on quickly. Don't let questions linger.
On Twitter, 4 of the stars of Suits, including Meghan. And she immediately direct messaged me. She slid into my DMs faster than...
Don't let people dig too deep. Redirect attention to the present instead of letting anyone examine the past too closely. But here's what makes that interesting. The harder you work to erase something, the more people wonder what you're trying to hide. If the past was innocent, if there was nothing to worry about, why go through such effort to scrub it? Why not just let old posts and photos exist, explain them if questions come up, and move on? The level of effort put into erasure suggests there was something worth erasing, something that didn't fit the narrative being built. And then there's Harry himself, who seems different now from the person we saw before Meghan. People who've watched him over the years notice the change, the way he carries himself, the things he says, the life he's living now compared to the life he lived before. People say he just wants time alone now, doesn't want to be filmed, doesn't want to be on social media.
What happens when a duchess walks onto a talk show thinking she owns the place, only to get reality checked by a host who refuses to play?
But he doesn't have a choice. Cameras are always around. Content constantly gets created. Something's always being posted or shared or documented. And he looks in a lot of these moments like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. There was this picture of them at a pumpkin farm, just the two of them holding hands, looking out at the pumpkins. And people's reaction was almost universal. It felt bewildering, didn't really mean anything, didn't go anywhere. Just this image that got posted, probably meant to look candid and cute, but instead felt staged and empty. Like going through the motions of what a happy couple does without any actual connection behind it. And that's become a pattern too. Photos that are supposed to show happiness but feel hollow. Appearances meant to demonstrate connection, but come across as performance.
The Telegraph said it was an exercise in narcissism, saying Meghan invites people to her pretend house and they tell her how amazing.
Moments that should feel genuine, but instead feel calculated. And Harry in the middle of it all, looking less like someone who found his fairy tale and more like someone trapped in a story someone else is writing. It's a stark contrast from the person he was before. The guy who seemed genuinely happy, who joked around, who had real warmth in his interactions. That version of Harry feels like it existed a long time ago. What we see now feels like a shadow of that. Someone going through the motions because that's what's expected, not because it's what he actually wants. And when you put it all together, the erased internet history, the controlled narrative, the changed person at the center of it all, you start to see a picture that's very different from the fairy tale we were sold. A picture where control...
The genesis of my relationship with Meghan Markle was I started following on Twitter. I loved Suits. You get on very well. And
matters more than reality, where image matters more than authenticity, and where the past gets rewritten to fit whatever story needs to be told in the present. Every narrative Meghan shared about her pre-royal life sounded inspiring. Ambition, hard work, humanitarian focus, an independent woman building a career through talent and determination. A modern fairy tale, really. The kind of story that makes people believe in possibilities, in the idea that if you work hard enough and stay focused, you can achieve anything. It was a perfect story. A perfect memory to protect. But fairy tales only work when nobody looks behind the curtain. Because once you pull it back, once you actually examine what's there, the glow starts to fade. The questions begin to appear, and something different begins to emerge from behind all that carefully constructed narrative.
You're in. This is the inside. Yeah.
Then she says, I'm coming to London to see my friend Serena play at Wimbledon, Serena Williams, and I'm going to...
Think about everything we've just gone through. The photos Piers showed that were supposed to stay buried forever. The impossible Soho House access that nobody can explain. How does a cable actress get into places where Kim Kardashian gets turned away? How does that happen without someone very powerful making it happen? The Marcus Anderson relationship that followed her everywhere. Not just friendship, not just professional connection, a global executive relocating multiple times to stay close to her, managing her access, positioning her in the exact circles where her life could change completely. That level of commitment doesn't come from casual friendship. That comes from believing someone is worth the investment. Yacht rumors that won't die no matter how many times people try to dismiss them. Even when some photos turn out to be wrong,
the only cooking content where the primary ingredient is confusion. Meghan Markle standing over a tragically
even when confusion gets mixed in, the rumors persist because the pattern underneath them makes too much sense. The luxury lifestyle, the billionaire connections, the access that doesn't match her known income. All of it pointing to something nobody wants to say out loud. Billionaire connections never publicly explained. Ron Burkell on the Soho House board. Marcus Anderson with ties to wealth and power. Events where the guest list reads like a Forbes ranking. And Meghan right there in the middle of it all, somehow funding a lifestyle that her suit's salary couldn't possibly cover. Somebody was footing the bill. Somebody was providing access. And nobody's ever explained who or why. The lifestyle that didn't match her income. Private jets, exclusive properties, designer clothes. Do the math. Calculate what she was making versus what she was spending.
Piers Morgan has never been shy about calling Meghan out. But this time, he wasn't reacting to an interview or a dramatic headline.
The numbers don't work. They never worked. But nobody asked the hard questions until it was too late, until she was already royal and protected by a whole new level of image management. The internet history that vanished, blog posts gone, photos scrubbed, social media interactions disappeared, things that should still exist because the internet preserves everything, suddenly impossible to find. That requires effort. Active work by people specifically trying to erase a version of someone that doesn't fit the story being told now. How her curated public image contrasts with what people saw, the humanitarian actress positioned at billionaire parties, the struggling artist with access to the most exclusive clubs in the world, the humble, down-to-earth person whose internet past had to be systematically erased.
According to the source, Meghan's alleged request wasn't for something off the shelf. It was for something custom-built, shaped to her body, created.
Those versions don't fit together. They tell completely different stories. All these pieces form something too sharp to ignore. This isn't about opinions or gossip, isn't about people making stuff up because they don't like her. This is about a story told one way and lived another. About the gap between who someone claimed to be and who they actually were. And as more details surface, as more people start asking questions that should have been asked years ago, one thing becomes impossible to avoid. Something in Meghan's origin story doesn't line up. The photos people saw don't match it. The connection she never explained contradict it. The lifestyle she somehow funded raises questions about it. The access that shouldn't have existed but clearly did undermines it. When the cracks in a fairy tale grow this wide, when the gap between the official story and reality becomes this obvious, the whole narrative starts to tremble.
The irony is earth-shattering, isn't it? Harry and Meghan are the Duke and Duchess of gaslighting themselves the entire show.
Because what really happened doesn't disappear just because someone wants it to. It waits. It presses forward. And sooner or later, it demands to be seen no matter how carefully someone tries to hide it. So as Piers Morgan continues, now armed with photos Meghan wanted buried forever, one question echoes louder than ever. If this part of Meghan's past isn't what she claimed, if this much of the story was constructed and controlled and carefully edited, what else was never meant to be discovered? What other parts of the fairy tale start to crumble when you look too closely? The fairy tale is fading. And what really happened is stepping into the light. So, what do you think? Did Meghan really just stumble into royal life, or was this years in the making? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And if you want more videos like this, ones that actually ask the questions nobody else will, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's a lot more to this story, and we're just getting started. Thanks for watching.